There is a scene from the Terminator that James Cameron shot, finished, and then locked in a vault. It was completed, it was edited, it was ready. And then someone made a decision, a quiet, terrifying decision, not a loud argument in a boardroom, not a dramatic standoff between a director and a studio executive, just a quiet conversation, a nod, and a splice in the editing reel. And because of that one cut, that one removed minute of footage, you have been watching the wrong version of this franchise for over 40 years. Not a slightly different version, the wrong one. The deleted scene doesn't just add context, it doesn't just fill a gap, it rewrites everything. Every sequel, every reboot, every no fate but what we make. All of it built on a lie. Here are the dark secrets behind the Terminator and the truth Orion Pictures tried to hide. Number 1. The scene that never was. Picture this. It's 1984. James Cameron is 29 years old, broke, running on coffee and controlled rage, and absolutely furious with creative energy. He has already mortgaged his future to make this film. He fought for every frame. He bled for every practical effect. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, he shoots a scene inside Cyberdyne Systems, a subterranean vault sequence, fluorescent lights humming, sterile and cold, where a senior technician discovers the crushed hand and CPU chip left behind by the T-800 after the factory fire. The technician doesn't just find it. He doesn't bag it as evidence. He doesn't call the police. He studies it. He turns it over under a magnifying lamp. He photographs it. He runs his thumb along the fracture points of the endoskeleton casing. This is the part that hurts. That smile means Skynet wasn't created in a vacuum. It wasn't some spontaneous leap in artificial intelligence that humanity stumbled into by accident. It was built deliberately, systematically from salvaged parts, from the Terminator's own remains, from the very machine that was sent back in time to prevent its own creation. The machine built itself. Cameron called it the causality trap in early production notes. Skynet didn't come from the future to create itself out of nothing. Skynet came from the future because it already had. A closed loop, a snake eating its own tail, perfectly sealed, perfectly inescapable. Orion's test audiences called it confusing, so they cut it. Think about that for 1 second. Let that sit in your chest. But the removal of that scene is only the beginning, because the scene didn't just explain the plot. It explained the soul of the entire franchise. And without it, every film that came after was building on sand. Number 2. The loop nobody was supposed to notice. Here's what Cameron understood that the studio didn't. That most audiences in 1984 didn't, that even a lot of film critics still don't fully sit with. The Terminator is not a movie about a robot trying to kill a woman. It is not an action movie with a sci-fi coat of paint. It is a movie about predestination, about the terrifying idea that free will might be a story we tell ourselves to get through the day. Everything that happens in the Terminator has already happened. Kyle Reese travels back in time to protect Sarah Connor. He falls in love with her. He dies protecting her. And in doing so, he becomes the father of John Connor, the very man who sent him back in time in the first place. John Connor sent his own father into the past. His own father, who had never met him, who only knew him as a photograph and a legend, died to make sure John Connor would be born. Nobody made that choice freely. It was already made. It was always already made. It sounds fake. It sounds like a paradox that would collapse under its own weight. But it's not fake. It's airtight. And Cameron knew it. That deleted Cyberdyne scene was the proof. the on-screen visual undeniable evidence that the loop is real and inescapable. Without it, the franchise can breathe. It can pretend there's wiggle room. It can pretend that maybe, just maybe, the future can be changed, that Judgment Day can be stopped, that humanity has a fighting chance. With that scene intact, there is no stopping anything. There never was. The audience would have seen it. They would have watched the trap close in real time, in fluorescent light, with a Cyberdyne technician's smile and a magnifying lamp. And that's exactly what Terminator 2 spent its entire runtime lying to you about. Confidently, expensively, with a budget of $102 million. Number 3. How to betrayed the original vision when Terminator 2, Judgment Day hit screens in 1991. It was an event, a cultural earthquake. The special effects were revolutionary. The liquid metal T-1000 was genuinely frightening. Arnold Schwarzenegger as a good Terminator learning to be human. That was emotionally effective in ways nobody expected from a franchise about killer robots. But the film made a choice. A massive, quiet, franchise-defining choice that most people accepted without blinking. It said the future is not fixed. Sarah and John Connor could destroy Cyberdyne. They could blow up the lab. They could eliminate the research, melt the chip, save Miles Dyson's soul, and walk away from the wreckage with the belief that they had actually won. That Judgment Day, the nuclear apocalypse, the birth of Skynet, the extinction of the human race, could be prevented, not just delayed, prevented. Cameron himself made this call. In interviews, he described wanting to give audiences a sense of hope, a sense that human agency matters, that the future isn't written, that we are not machines running a predetermined program. It's a beautiful sentiment. It's also a direct contradiction of everything the original film was built on. Here is the dirty secret that T2 cannot survive once you know it. That hope only works if you forget the deleted scene exists, if you pretend the vault sequence never happened. Because the moment you restore it, even just conceptually, even just in your imagination, the entire premise of T2 collapses like wet cardboard. Because if Skynet's chip was already recovered in 1984 and already being studied by Cyberdyne engineers with wide eyes and filing folders, then destroying the official Cyberdyne research lab in 1991 does nothing. 7 years of covert study, 7 years of data, 7 years of a technician going home at night and writing notes in a private journal that nobody ever searched for. The seed was already planted. The roots were already deep. Sarah Connor didn't destroy Cyberdyne. She destroyed one branch of a tree that had already grown underground for nearly a decade. Look closer. T2 isn't a sequel. It's a cover story. And the studio knew exactly what they were doing when they cut that scene from the original. Whether they understood the full implications or not, they gave every future filmmaker permission to lie, to pivot, to sell hope to an audience that the source material had already quietly condemned. Number 4. The chip in the wall. Here's where your palms start sweating. Because even in the version of the Terminator that you have seen, the official release, the theatrical cut, the version sitting in your streaming queue right now, the evidence is still there, hiding in plain sight, scratched into the background of scenes that move too fast for most viewers to fully absorb. Miles Dyson. That name appears in the theatrical cut, not prominently, not with a spotlight on it, but it's there. A reference to Cyberdyne's lead researcher, a man who will go on in the years after the factory fire to change the world, to build a thinking machine, to birth the apocalypse from the wreckage of a crime scene that the Los Angeles Police Department closed without understanding what they had found. The T-800's arm, recovered from the rubble, taken into Cyberdyne's possession. That detail survives in the theatrical cut. That detail is the deleted scene, compressed into a single narrative beat that most viewers process and immediately move on from. But the deleted vault sequence was supposed to show you exactly how that process worked. The mechanism, the speed, the cold institutional efficiency of a corporation that found something it didn't understand and immediately began to monetize it instead of report it. The theatrical cut shows you the result: a destroyed factory, a woman who survived, a future that is coming regardless. Cameron's deleted scene showed you the mechanism, the hand on the chain that will pull the entire world over the edge. The moment where human curiosity and corporate hunger met a piece of technology from 100 years in the future and said, quietly, yes. There is a massive, stomach-dropping difference between watching a door slam shut and watching someone consciously, deliberately turn the key and hear the lock click. That grinding feeling in your back teeth right now. That's what it feels like to understand what got removed from this movie. That's what 40 years of watching the wrong cut feels like when it finally comes into focus. But the scene itself isn't the only thing that was buried. Number 5. Cameron fought the studio in real time. The studio begged them to cut this. That is not an exaggeration, and it is not myth-making. Orion Pictures was already deeply nervous about the Terminator before it was even finished. They thought it was too bleak, too cold, too relentless. The machine at the center of the film felt genuinely threatening in a way that made focus group audiences uncomfortable, in a way they couldn't articulate but could absolutely mark on a feedback card. Test screenings came back with words like exhausting, hopeless, left me feeling terrible, no one to root for. Studio notes pushed hard for warmth, for humanity, for moments where the audience could exhale and believe that goodness might survive what was coming. Cameron refused almost everything. He is not a director who takes notes quietly. The battles on that production were real, documented, and sometimes conducted at significant volume. Almost everything. Not everything. The Cyberdyne vault scene was his one major concession, the piece he gave up to protect everything else. He made a calculation, the kind of brutal creative calculation that filmmakers only make when they are out of room and out of time. The vault scene versus the future war opening. The vault scene versus the dream sequences. The vault scene versus the full factory finale with every practical effect beat intact. He chose the movie over the mythology. It was the right call for the Terminator as a standalone film. It made the movie leaner, faster, and more emotionally immediate. The pacing of the theatrical cut is close to perfect precisely because Cameron sacrificed the scene that explained too much too slowly. But it was the wrong call for everything that came after, because he handed the keys of the franchise to a lie. He left a door open that every subsequent filmmaker walked through and furnished as if it were the living room instead of an emergency exit. Nobody knew what that would cost. Not yet. That particular bill would take decades to arrive. Number 6. The scene lives in one specific print. This is the part that really hurts. Sit with this one, because this is where the story moves from film history into something that feels closer to myth, except that myths don't leave paper trails. There are reports, unverified, circulated in film preservation communities, mentioned in corners of the internet, where people take frame-by-frame analysis seriously, that an early work print of the Terminator containing the full Cyberdyne vault sequence was screened at least once, possibly twice, during private pre-distribution testing in late 1984. One print, maybe two, physically assembled, physically projected, in a room full of people who signed nothing and remembered everything. Film historian accounts from the early 2000s, not Wikipedia summaries, actual documented accounts, reference audience questionnaire cards from that period that describe in handwritten responses a scene set in a laboratory where workers at a company examine pieces of a machine after the film's climax. The descriptions are consistent. Multiple cards, multiple people. The same scene described from different angles in different handwriting with different levels of film vocabulary. That work print has never been officially confirmed to exist as a surviving physical object. It has never been digitized. It has never been released in any form. But it has reportedly changed hands at least once in private collector networks, the same networks that surface 35mm prints of films everyone assumed were gone forever. If you're watching this on any device right now, pause. Because somewhere, in a climate-controlled room, or a fire-resistant safe, or the trunk of someone's car at a swap meet in 1997, there may be a version of the Terminator that makes every sequel that followed it feel like a very expensive and very confident mistake. It sounds fake. Every part of it sounds exactly like the kind of thing someone invents to make a YouTube video more interesting. But the questionnaire references are real. The work print culture of that era is real. And the scene itself is documented in Cameron's own early production materials, which have been partially surfaced by researchers over the years. It's not fake. The door existed. Whether the door still exists somewhere is the question nobody has officially answered. And that brings us to the scene that ruined everything else. The one Cameron actually intended to close the film with. Number 7. The ending Cameron actually wanted. Most people think the Terminator ends with Sarah Connor in a Jeep, driving south toward an oncoming storm on a dirt road in Mexico. A Polaroid camera, a boy pumping gas who looks at her with the face of someone who already knows something is wrong. The storm coming, the future coming, the screen going dark. It is a great ending, genuinely great. It earns every frame of its ambiguity. It is not the ending James Cameron originally wanted. Early drafts, production notes, and accounts from people present during post-production reference an additional beat that was planned, storyboarded, and apparently partially shot before being pulled from the assembly cut. A final scene, interior, Cyberdyne Systems headquarters, late night. The building quiet. A single office, one desk lamp still burning, a security badge face down on the desk, a manila folder, and inside that folder, photographs. Clear, clinical, forensic quality photographs of the T-800's dismantled CPU, plated hand, and fractured endoskeleton casing. All of it cataloged, all of it labeled, all of it filed under a project designation with a budget line and a projected completion date. One word on a tab at the top of the folder. Skynet. Cut. Cut for time. Cut for pacing. Cut allegedly. Because a test screening that ended on Sarah Connor driving into the desert scored 17 points higher on audience satisfaction than a test screening that ended on a manila folder in an empty office. 17 points. That's what the closed loop cost. That's what Predestination was worth to an audience in 1984 who came to see a movie on a Friday night and wanted to drive home feeling like survival was possible. But think about what that shot would have been. 15 seconds, no dialogue, no action, no score, maybe. Just the ambient hum of an office building at night. A folder, a word. The camera holds, then black. That is the most frightening ending in blockbuster film history. Not because anything violent happens, because nothing does. Because you watch the trap close on the entire human race in complete silence, while a desk lamp flickers in an empty room. That is the movie James Cameron actually made. What you have been watching your entire life is the version they edited for a Friday night audience that wanted to feel okay on the drive home. Number 8. Every sequel becomes a different story. Once you know all of this, the vault scene, the closed loop, the intended final shot, every film that came after the Terminator transforms into something different. Something sadder and more absurd than it appeared before. Terminator 2. Judgment Day is not a victory. It is a delusion. A beautiful, technically brilliant, emotionally resonant delusion in which Sarah and John Connor blow up a building that the original film already told you wasn't the real problem. The real problem was already in a folder, already in a budget line, already past the point of no return before Linda Hamilton ever touched a pull-up bar. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines is not a betrayal of T2's hopeful ending. It is the truth coming back to the surface. John Connor sitting in that bunker at the end, listening to radio signals, finally accepting that Judgment Day could not be stopped. That's not a cynical cash grab. That is the original film's thesis finally being allowed to breathe again after 12 years of being suppressed by a more expensive and more optimistic sequel. Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, Terminator Dark Fate. Every single one of these films is Hollywood running from a closed room. Every new timeline, every alternate Sarah Connor, every the past can be changed. Narrative pivot is a studio refusing to accept what a 29-year-old James Cameron encoded into a scene that lasted less than 90 seconds and was removed before you ever had a chance to see it. The franchise has been running from its own closed loop for over 40 years. The machine won in 1984 in a vault under fluorescent lights, with a technician's smile and a magnifying lamp. Everything else is just the sound of humans convincing themselves otherwise. Number 9. What the scene means for you. The viewer here is the final, unavoidable piece of this. The reason this deleted scene matters isn't just cinematic. It isn't just about franchise mythology or director's intent or work print culture. It matters because of what it says about the experience of watching these films. Every time you sat through a Terminator sequel and felt that vague, nagging sense that something was slightly off, that the hope being offered felt a little too clean, a little too purchased, that feeling was real. You were sensing the absence of something, the gap where a 90-second scene used to be. The echo of a closed loop that the franchise spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to open back up. You were feeling the edit. That is what a great film does. It doesn't just tell you things. It shapes the space inside your chest. And when something is removed from that space, cut quietly, filed away, locked in a vault, the shape of the absence remains. You feel it as unease, as the sense that the ending didn't quite land, as the lingering question you can never fully articulate in the parking lot after the movie ends. The Terminator planted something in 1984. The studio trimmed it back before it could fully flower, and for 40 years, audiences have been circling the empty plot of ground where it was supposed to grow, wondering why the garden never felt complete. Now you know. Now you can feel it properly. Now that nagging, shapeless unease has a name and a running time and a folder tab with one word on it. Dead silence. That's the sound of understanding a story you thought you already knew. James Cameron put a locked door in the first frame of this franchise. He handed the studio the key. They threw it away and told you the door was never there. They sold you hope. They sold you sequels built on hope. They sold you reboots of reboots, each one trying to recapture something it could never name because the thing it was chasing was sitting in a vault somewhere, 90 seconds long, fluorescent lit, with a technician's smile and a machine part on a desk. You have been watching the aftermath for 40 years. The closed loop was always there. It was always real, and one deleted scene, one quiet, corporate, terrifying scene, proved it before the credits ever rolled on the original film. The machine already won. It won in a basement lab in 1984. Everything since then has just been us, driving into the storm, telling ourselves the future isn't written. It was always written. We just never got to see the page. If you survived this video, hit like. Subscribe if you want more rabbit holes that you cannot climb back out of. And tell me in the comments, what is the one movie scene you can never unsee? The one that rewired something in your brain and never gave it back? I am reading every single one. I will see you in the next one, if the loop allows it.